everybody. This is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and privilege of chatting with bassist, songwriter, producer, arranger, long list of many talents, Erik Kertes.
Hello. How are you doing, Raul?
Great, great.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Many of you might recognize Erik as the bassist with Shakira. And
Yes.
we'll talk a little bit about that, but I always like to start so people get a chance to know you. Tell us about your bass journey. How did you get started in bass?
Okay. Well, first of all, my father is a bass player. So growing up with his 75p bass in the house, that was the bass. He's also a multi-instrumentalist, guitar player, a violinist, piano player. So I kind of just followed his journey on, not necessarily violin, but I started on piano and moved over to some guitar. And then I remember being in junior high and being in a band, and there were two guitar players, me and this other dude, and a drummer. And the guy was far better a guitar player than I. So I switched to bass and never looked back, and that was it. And then after that, I ended up going to an arts magnet high school.
Okay.
In LA, in East LA, called the LACHSA, Los Angeles County High School for the Arts, where they had a jazz and a classical program, which I was involved with. And that's when I started playing upright bass, and, as well as I was already playing electric bass at that point. Mm-hmm. But I started playing upright bass there and really getting into jazz. And then I continued on the jazz journey. I was a jazz studies major at USC, where I studied with John Clayton. And, the rest is history of just bass forever.
Gotcha. And the transition from the academic setting, how did you leap into the professional realm of doing this?
Well, luckily, because I went to starting in that high school, what was really cool is they would send us out on gigs. There would be whatever special events in LA, and they'd hire the jazz combo from the arts high school, and that was like a kind of a hip thing for them to do, and we got early experience working around town. And then I continued gigging. I didn't ever really have to have a day job or like a summer job. I worked at a music store for a summer, but other than that, it was just always playing gigs. And when I was in college, I was playing with this jazz singer, and we started a band, and she ended up signing a record deal before we graduated. And as soon as I was done with school, we hit the road touring, in Asia and all over the U.S., doing jazz clubs and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And so a lot of it had to do with being in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
But yeah. I also imagine, and part of what I've heard from a lot of musicians is that by getting that exposure and networking, it shows people that you can get along, because people that play in bands spend more time usually with the band than they do with their family.
I mean, that's so true. And, I feel like I talk about that all the time when people are asking me for advice or anything like that. I feel like the secret to success is really just being cool, mm-hmm. being relatable, easy to get along with, fun and whatever. Because essentially, like what you said, you go on tour and, the concert's an hour and a half long, maybe.
Yeah. The
rest of the time, you have to be a good person to get along with, because it's all about the hang. And, you mentioned Shakira, it's just so funny that when they're looking for new additions, it's all just about what's cool about our industry is everybody's great. Everyone can play. And then knowing that everyone can play, then you kind of move on and say all right, are they cool? Mm-hmm. Are they a good hang is a term I hear a lot. And that's so important. I can't stress that enough. I mean, it may be the main thing.
Well, and so many times you're absolutely right. And the one that always jumps to mind, Rudy Sarzo had told me that when they were auditioning for Ozzy, that he said 100 other guys could have played the lines.
Right.
But they knew him from experience, and he was easy to get along with, and he was, dependable, because
totally.
that in itself is also the other thing. I always chuckle because there's some authors out of New York City, because it's, again, the scene. If you're in the right place, like LA, there's a lot of music and stuff going on.
Right.
But they've written books on how to be a successful bassist in New York, and among the many things they include, like, have dependable gear, have a dependable vehicle, get to the places on time, and
Totally.
the common sense things that you'd go, how is it that they even had to write this? But apparently
Yeah.
they have.
Another thing that's really important that um, I maybe had to learn the hard way a long time ago is, you know, showing up knowing the music. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I when I first started out, I thought the idea of rehearsal meant, oh, rehearsal, so maybe it doesn't have to be perfect. That's actually not true. If you want to keep getting called back and back again, rehearsal just means we're just going to run the songs once and that's it. And everyone make sure everyone is on top of their parts. And I can't stress that enough. The homework is so important. So I always, when I go into a setting like that, I always try and make sure I have everything down note for note. Maybe you can have a chart. I have an iPad to keep stuff on. That's
Mm-hmm.
cool, but be able to perform it perfectly is, that's the goal.
Got you. And I know if people can certainly look at the long list of other musicians and groups that you've played with, but more recently with Shakira, how long have you been playing with her?
I've been playing with Shakira since 2014. That's when
Gotcha.
I signed on. I'm the kind of the one of the newer members of the band. Some of those other guys have been there since the beginning, and
Wow.
they're going on their 20th year with her, and it's pretty crazy. It's been a good ride for them.
Very cool. And musically, again, I probably have been more attent to the earlier stuff, and because of part of my roots being in Latin America,
Yeah,
and those the tempos and everything always have caught my attention, but it brings some interesting challenges with some of the Latin kind of stuff.
totally. And it was very challenging for me, not really having played too much Latin music. Of course, when I was playing jazz, there's Latin jazz crossover. There's
Hmm.
plenty of that I was able to play. But this is, you know, Shakira kind of borrows from, a lot of different music and cultures that I wasn't familiar with, like some cumbia and,
Hmm.
different things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a pop gig,
Yeah.
but it's a fun gig to play on bass because you get to dive into that stuff. Um, and it was challenging and super fun to get that stuff under my fingers. Um, and yeah, I think that, a good, like the secret to kind of being a good side guy is to be able to kind of play anything, or at least have the tools to figure out how to perform it,
Hmm.
with like perfectly, essentially, or just like you've been playing it your whole life.
Gotcha.
Um, so it took some time, but it was cool to learn that stuff. It was really fun.
Got you. And I know one of the, kind of depending with what group you're working with, sometimes they want you to play it by the book.
Right.
Other times they'll go, okay, maybe take a little liberty here or there and put your own
Mhm.
feel to it. How much creative license are you able to take with what you're playing with Shakira?
With Shakira, Shakira has kind of super ears, and she knows exactly what she wants.
Hmm.
Um, I would say there's a little room for creativity, but for the most part, I'll tell you what I always do with every gig is I'll start at note for note,
Hmm.
and we'll kind of go from there. Um, I think that's a safe move on for any situation is make sure you learn the record, and then you can kind of feel out on the gig, well, what liberties can I take, or what things aren't going to translate live and make as much sense, and you can kind of decide that, and change something. Nobody says anything, great, that's cool. But she's kind of notorious for having giant ears and wanting to hear the same parts for the most part.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And in addition to Shakira, and you've got your long list of so many things that you're doing, and one of the attributes I've seen of many bassists is this juggling act where they're kind of going, okay, I may be touring at this point, but by the same token, I'm writing in my spare time, or like you said, the concert's an hour, 2 hours.
Right.
You have time in between that you can be doing other things. What other projects do you have going on?
I have a recording studio that I'm in right now,
Okay.
where I do a lot of work from recording bass on people's records to producing full records in here. Um, I think this day and age with the music industry where it is, if you want to be a full-time musician and make a living doing it, you really need to be either the very best at one thing or really great at many different things. So I've tried to kind of spread myself around. I do a lot of writing, a lot of producing. Um, I wrote a few songs for another artist I play with, Michael Bublé. I wrote a few songs for his last record, including his first single. It was called Nobody But Me.
Nice.
So that was really great. And as a result of that, I signed a publishing deal with Cobalt Music and have been doing co-writes and stuff for film and TV. It's kind of just endless. I'm kind of just up for anything. I feel like that's kind of the way you have to be now.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, someone who loves, bass is my first love, and I'll always be a bass player. But I love playing guitar, love playing piano. I love writing, producing, recording. It's all good with me, So a little bit of everything.
Got you. And is there anything that you haven't done yet, but you're thinking, gee, I'd really like to, maybe down the road, if I had more time, what would you want to do?
As far as just like anything under the musical spectrum?
Sure.
Well,
Unless you're planning on deep sea diving or bungee jumping or something extreme.
That would be cool too. I love. So far, I've kind of written mainly songs for other artists, and I would like to do a record of my own stuff. I did one back in 2011, but it's time to do another one, And so I'm kind of slowly chipping away at that.
Gotcha.
Not for any reason other just for my own soul and my own enjoyment, and I'll give it away to my friends or whoever wants to listen to it. But that's important to me, to kind of always have the project that's going to feed your soul going on while you're doing the juggling act with everything else at the same time.
Got you. Well, and certainly with a lot of bass solo acts and CDs, I think the audience is a much narrower spectrum because it ends up being other bassists that want to hear what you're doing. And there are some instances where they'll translate to the general public that it's not lost on them. Like somebody like Victor Wooten can play a universal crowd, and there's so much going on with his bass playing, but it's not, the people are not losing it going, well, what's he doing now? They're just they get kind of drawn into it. So
it's kind of amazing what Victor does, and there's a lot of I know a lot of musicians, especially instrumental musicians, where they can kind of exude this joy that brings people in, and it doesn't have to be vocal music or lyrics. It's just this energy that they put out that just makes people want to get into it. It's really cool.
Gotcha. And I'd be remiss if we didn't mention gear, because obviously gear gives the bassist a voice. Tell us about how you have got your voice. What are you using?
Well, I'm a big nerd for gear, and I love vintage stuff. I love vintage Fender. I have too many basses, and maybe an embarrassing amount. But I think if I were to come down to it, desert island situations, a P bass. I used to be P bass and SVT guy all the time. That was my thing. plugging direct into the amp and the whole thing. Now that I'm doing more gigs that require a little bit more versatility, I always have a P bass out. I'll start with the Shakira gig. On the Shakira gig, I have my two Moulins, which is a P classic, and the J5, which is a jazz bass 5-string. And then I have a Fender, one of the new American Professional series, the one in olive green, beautiful bass.
Yes.
I have that one out there, as well as a Yamaha BB as another 5-string option. And then I have a Gibson kind of 335 bass out there that we do on one of the kind of broken down songs. And I also have an upright out there, and I'm playing cello too on this one. Wow. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my Moog sub fatty that I'm doing synth bass on 5 or 6 songs on the set.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then amplification, are you doing more of a DI kind of thing because of the setup?
Yeah, it started. I'm endorsed officially with Aguilar, and I love Aguilar, and I have my whole Aguilar rig out there. But what they ended up doing with this stage is it's a super clean stage. There's no amps on stage, so I'm just using my Sans amp, and it sounds awesome. I can't get mad at a Sans amp. Old and trusty, and sounds great.
And fits in a smaller case.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I still have my Aguilar rig under the stage, but it's, I don't know if they even are taking the mic on it,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And pedal-wise, anything in addition to the Sans app?
It's funny on this, there's a couple songs that I need a kind of a synthy sound on, so I have the Electro Harmonix bass microsynth, which is awesome, and because it's set up the way it is, and I need it on a few different songs, I have 2 of them, so that the settings can stay where they are, and I don't have to switch the settings in between songs.
Gotcha.
And beyond that, I have the Aguilar fuzz pedal, which I love. That's my favorite fuzz pedal. It's so usable. And what else am I using? I use a Pog, the Micro Pog, as my octave pedal. I love that pedal because you can also get the octave up, which just creates such a huge sound if you kind of mix that in a little bit, as well as the octave down at 100%. Then all of a sudden your bass just sounds even more massive. So that's super cool. What else is on there? And then I'm using my Aguilar Tone Hammer DI from my upright, actually. I like that for upright, dialing in a nice upright tone.
Very cool. And string-wise, have a choice
Strings. There? Yeah, I love Diodario. Has been great. They've been super cool to me, and they've supplied me with awesome strings for this tour. Especially, I can't say enough good things about, if you're an upright player, the Zyx string that they make, which is a hybrid arco pizzicato string that's like supposed to be kind of like a gut string vibe, and it sounds killer. And I've used a lot of upright bass strings, and it's the one that I found to be the best thus far. That's a really great one.
Very cool, very cool. Well, it sounds like there's just so much great stuff happening, and we appreciate you managing to find a moment out of your busy schedule.
This is amazing.
To chat with us and share this. If people want to know where you are or what you're up to, is the best place to look erikkertes.com?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, ErikKertes.com.
Gotcha. And do you, social media wise, are you putting out a lot of stuff there too? Or?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and totally into all that. And it's just, I think my name is just at Erik Kertes, ErikKertes. If anyone wants to be friends on the internet.
Well, we're a big bass community, but it's, compared, I suppose, to the rest of the musicians of the world, we're a close-knit group. But I'm always happy to say that the bass guys and gals are the most chill people and the nicest folks there is in
So
the
true.
business. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who you're talking to. You could be talking to the new guy that's just started playing gigs on the Jersey Shore, or you could be playing to like Lee Sklar, who's 70 and he's still touring.
Yeah, amazing.
And they're all just great people, which makes what I do, having a chance to share and discover and learn about you, just so much more fun. So, folks, with that, I won't keep Erik any longer. You've heard it here. Erik Kertes, playing with Shakira. Check out what he's doing at erikkertes.com. Coming to you live from Bass Musician Magazine.
Awesome. Thanks, Raul.
Thank you.